Hey, I'm so glad to join you today. Please excuse my voice. I've been struggling with recovering from a cold, and it's made me sound like I'm an alto or maybe even a tenor today. So I'll probably be speaking a little lower or slower just because I'm struggling to speak in general. But I'm very glad to be here with you guys today. We're going to be talking about being shattered after surviving abuse, how shattering the abuse experience is to our identity, and we often lose our sense of self. We end up sometimes we don't even know who we really are. We've lost touch with what we like, what we enjoy. We've lost touch with uh, our values, maybe even habits we have, like things that we enjoy that are like foods. Or I know for me, I've put down hobbies that I was enjoying before. I used to cross stitch a lot and knit and crochet. I even at one point owned a spinning wheel, and I would spin yarn, and I sold all of that at that relationship. And then when I got out of it, I just ended up in a different space, and I just kind of was so focused on what happened, so obsessed. It's what it really felt like. It felt like an obsession that I couldn't focus on things that previously had defined me. And I wonder if that describes you after you've been in one of these toxic relationships. So I really, really appreciate that. So as my moderator is asking if it's possible for later joiners to scroll back to the start of the chat. I honestly don't know. I've not actually tried that. For those of you who don't know, I go live every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. We talk about different topics. This week is about what happens when we survive abuse. Next week is going to be about covert narcissism. So if you really would like to learn a lot more about what covert narcissism, how it fools us, and why are they so difficult to spot, what makes them one of the most dangerous subtypes of narcissism. I hope you'll join me. For those who are new to my platform who don't know me, I'm Dr. Kerry McAvoy. I am a retired licensed psychologist, and I have over 25 years of clinical practice. I had a private practice for a really long time until I closed it in 2015, and that was when my late husband died. And at that point, I was just really grieving and wasn't in the shape to see clients. So I moved out of that, and then I ended up marrying the worst of. You take all the trauma I've ever suffered in my life, package it in one person, and that's who I married in my second marriage. And I didn't know that he actually married me for a relationship scam. He had known I was dumb enough because I didn't know better, because I had never really dated. I met my late husband pretty much right out of during college and married right out of college. I didn't know you shouldn't put widow in your profile, that it was a calling card for people who were looking for life insurance money. And sure enough, that's what happened. He was looking for life insurance money, and he married me hoping that he could actually take it at some form or another. I suspect he actually was trying to unalive me and take the money, that I had signs of being of arsenic poisoning. So I was extremely ill in that relationship. Thank God I made it out. And it was God. I thank God I made it out. So these days I talk about everything related to narcissistic abuse. And one of the big things that happens when we first get out of these relationships is our sense of self is devastated. We often don't know really who we are, because what happens in these relationships, we become so focused on meeting their needs, trying to keep the conflict from brewing, from trying to stop the betrayals that you've been experiencing, trying to keep yourself safe, trying to really focus on everything that they say they need in these relationships. We become so focused on that we lose ourselves. And I know for me, when I first got out of that relationship, I didn't know what to do with myself. I just instead would comb backups of the phone. I had taken up, I had copies of his phone several times in the marriage. I would make backups of I would, go through that phone trying to see if I could identify something new that I didn't know. And I did. I continued to find really horrific stuff that I hadn't known during the marriage, that confirmed that I was in a lot of danger in that marriage. And I just was lost. And I have a feeling a lot of you feel lost when you get out of these toxic relationships, that you've become like a ghost-like figure of who you were before. Maybe some of you may have met that person right out of marriage or right out of high school or right out of college. And you never really got to identify who you were as a person and really develop that person. So maybe you're feeling like, I don't know who I would have been. I don't know who I am today. I feel incredibly lost. So these relationships are very identity forming, but also identity shattering. So today we're going to get into talking about why you've lost yourself in narcissistic abuse. And by the way, for those of you who really want to know what is narcissism, why is narcissists the way that they are? Are they made? Is it trauma? Is it is it bad child rearing? Is it genetics? What's the root cause? And why are they so sadistic? Have you noticed how frequently they're cruel? Well, in December 4th, in the Toxic Free Relationship Club, Dr. Peter Salerno is joining the club for 90 minutes. It's a free Q&A for anyone who's a club member. Now there's three tiers when you join my club. You can be a subscriber, which is $5 a month, a community, which enjoys the community benefits for $15 a month, or Premier, which you get live up to 6 live group coaching sessions every week, in addition to grounding sessions, a book club, all sorts of really wonderful stuff at the upper level. So if you'd like to learn more about the club, and by the way, you can come in as a subscriber at the $5 level, enjoy the monthly Q&As that we host, and then the quarterly club-wide event, which is Dr. Salerno in December. You can enjoy all that for $5 a month. So check out Kerry McAvoy, PhD /club and find out more about these benefits. But yeah, it's incredible how these relationships are so destructive and how so many of these individuals seem hell bent on really destroying your life, taking everything that's most important to you away from you. So if you'd like to understand why narcissists behave that way, I really urge you to check out the Toxic Free Relationship Club. And if you today, I will have to post it on TikTok. I don't know. Maybe Leslie's there. I don't know if she's not or not, but I'm giving away the first month free. So you actually can go to this event for free on me if you join the club. And there's no commitment. You can join for a month and then drop out, get what you need and then drop out. So honestly, I'm just wanting to pass along the information and for you to get exposure to club and find out what it's really like. On TikTok, if you wouldn't mind tapping that screen and liking and sharing this, maybe you know someone who really is struggling with their sense of self. They feel incredibly shattered. You know that they are the husk of themselves. That really make sure to share this with. Yeah. So I would love to have more people be a part of this discussion. We're going to get into it. So let me outline what we're going to be talking about today over the next 50 minutes. And if there's time, I'll be happy to take your questions. But the first, I'm going to talk about why narcissistic abuse is so identity shattering. And then I'm going to give you a quiz to find out if you're experiencing a shattered identity right now. So that will be the second thing I covered today is a quiz to find out if your identity is shattered. Then I want to talk about how this abuse actually damages your identity. What is happening inside of these relationships that are so incredibly shaping for our sense of self. And then I want to talk about why is narcissistic abuse more damaging than other types of abuse? What happens? Because narcissistic abuse is just one form of abuse. There's also just regular domestic violence. There's also just various forms, spiritual abuse. But why is narcissistic abuse particularly harmful to our sense of self? And then I'm going to wrap it up with whether or not abusers know they're harming your sense of self. Do they actually are aware of the damage they're doing to you? I know a lot of us want to understand the intentionality. So I'm going to wrap up talking about intentionality today. So if that's a big question you've had, I'd hope you stick around so you can actually listen to that part and make it make sense for you. So why is narcissistic abuse so identity shattering? Because of the gaslighting and the reality overrides, because repeatedly you're experiencing your memories, feelings, and perceptions being challenged or mocked. And so you start to distrust your own inner compass and you start outsourcing that truth to the other person. I know that I started looking to him for most things in my relationship. He actually governed our menu. He decided when we got to eat. He also usually decided even what time the light would go out in the bedroom because he would watch TV until all night hours of the night. he would decide how his work hours, because he and I work together. So I ended up pulling 2 shifts for our company. He would pull maybe, if you qualify it, as 1, maybe. And even then, I didn't feel like he really did the job like a wholehearted way. So as a result, you start to just trust yourself. You realize it's better to have them lead than you to try to do it, because everything you do ends up being challenged as wrong or bad or as the cause of all the problems, even though when it really actually isn't. So you just decide it doesn't make sense, you give up. There's also the intermittent reinforcement. We talk a lot about that, how there's this pattern of reinforcement that keeps you chasing the possible good or the love or the nice times. And as a result of that, you start to focus on that, trying to win their approval. You prioritize their approval over yourself, and that leads to self-betrayal and self-abandonment as a result of that. And then there's the coercive control, which leads to isolation. And they essentially set rules about everything: who you can see, when you can go out, actually what you can wear, maybe what kind of hairstyles you have, how you spend money. And so as a result, you end up feeling like you need to comply in order to feel safe. Here's one of the odd ones he had for me. He established really quickly we were having no pets in our lives. He'd actually joke about it, but to reinforce the idea, we were not going to have pets. Now, why is that a big deal? Well, I grew up on a dairy farm. I had had pets and animals in my life my entire life. And just prior to my late husband passing away, I had had a dog that I'd lost quite suddenly. But my ex just insisted we were not going to have pets in our life. The second thing he said is that he never wanted me to wear animal print. Now, he had an extra relationship that had ended roughly around the time he and I started, and she wore a lot of animal prints. And I think it was because he didn't want me to kind of usurp or override his specialness with her. He wanted it to be a him and her thing, not a my thing. So he just told me that I couldn't wear animal prints. It didn't look good on me. And then he even tried to dictate what kind of clothes. He would take me out clothes shopping and then pick the most awful, kind of the bag clothes that looked like bags. He'd try to dress me in these really unflattering outfits that was really offensive and just hurtful. So I ended up feeling like our lives were shaped by his music taste. He controlled the TV in the evening. He decided when the TV got turned off and the lights went off. He decided when we ate and what we ate. I mean, essentially everything in our lives became about what made him feel, what he appreciated, what he needed. And if he didn't get his way, he would make sure to disrupt our whole day, our whole plans in order to get whatever it was he needed for that day. For example, we were at a honeymoon on one of the Caribbean islands, and he really loves microwave popcorn, a particular type of microwave popcorn. He was upset that they had actual stadium style, like theater style popcorn, but not microwave popcorn. He insisted the hotel bring in a microwave. They didn't carry microwaves in the separate rooms, but he insisted we had a microwave in our room. And then he actually spent over $60 taking a taxi, driving around the local towns to see if he could find some little packets of microwave popcorn. And he even complained to the hotel, this resort, that there was no microwave popcorn. Actually lost a day to our honeymoon for him looking for microwave popcorn. Microwave popcorn. How many of us have to do away with a lot of things we don't have in our lives, you know? I mean, we can't maybe watch his favorite TV when we're in a resort because we're in another country. Maybe we end up our schedule is different, or maybe we don't have contact with our kids every day. You don't stop the whole show because you don't get that. But he actually was stopping the whole show looking for microwave popcorn. That's an example of how weird coercive control can look, and how very defining. And so what happens is you just, why would if I fought against that, can you imagine what would happen? I went along. I didn't fight. I didn't complain about the money spent. I didn't complain about the lost time. I didn't complain about his preoccupation, because I knew it would make things worse. So what you do, the coercive control just makes you shrink and you comply and you just make their preferences, even though it feels completely selfish. And then they're isolating you. Now, how he did it with me is my closest friend at the time. He said our relationship threatened him. He felt he was going to I found out he was a cheater, and he said he felt like cheating when I spoke to her. That made him feel threatening. Well, of course I'm going to stop speaking to her because I don't want him cheating. But then he started never allowing me to be alone with a phone call. So he was always present in the room listening. And then I knew he was listening because he'd follow up with questions. Well, soon I just stopped taking phone calls. I stopped reaching out to family, stopped making efforts to connect because I couldn't bear the supervision of him wanting to, who was that? What did they want? And why did they want that? And why did you answer that way? It just was too much. So it shut me down. So that's another reason why you lose your identity is just because it just doesn't make sense to push. Then there's the shame introjects. Let me explain what that is. It's you have an inner self that really tries to protect you a lot. And it probably is your inner critic. It runs ahead and warns you, hey, why did you not do a better job there? If you don't do a better job, somebody might critique you. And if they critique you, you know how well that goes. You know how that makes you feel really bad. So you actually start to try to be better for to please this inner critic. It's actually trying to protect you. In internal family systems, Dr. Schwartz calls this your protector, your guard. Sometimes they're firemen. They're trying to like protect things from you for you. So they actually run ahead and try to they interject the negative people in your life. So if it's your spouse or intimate partner, if it's maybe a parent or maybe it's an adult child, you interject that person into your head and then you hear them complain to you about yourself. And what it's trying to do is protect you from the risk out there in the world with this person and other people. But what happens is that it starts to police you and you start to feel like you have to please this inner critic inside of you in order to feel safe because you've interjected this harsh person. So here's how it shows up for me still today. I'm having to actively work against it. He was so preoccupied with women because he was a serial cheater and he actually, I mean, I'm sorry, this is going to be crude. It's probably triggering for some of you, but we were at a beach and there was a lot of women there, especially women scantily dressed. Of course there would be. It's Mexico, it's hot. He would say there's a lot of meat there today. Yeah, you heard me correctly. Meat, MEAT. He called all of us, all women, meat. And he would say there's a lot of meat there. That's all you were to him. That's all I was to him, meat. So as a result, felt really critical of my body. I have never been a skinny woman, not ever in my life. Even at my thinnest, I was medium sized. I'm definitely not thin now. I'm a menopausal woman. And I knew that. I knew that I wasn't quote unquote his type, even though we were the same age. His preferences were 20-year-olds, not 50-year-olds. And as a result, I had this feeling in my head of I was never good enough. So whenever I put on an outfit, I end up thinking, yep, there's a 50-year-old postmenopausal body, not a person he's attracted to. And even though today I don't frankly care, this is a person I would not want to please. He grosses me out, actually, frankly, honestly. I still have that person inside my head trying to protect me from the negative attitudes of all possible men, although I know that's not true about all men. That's not fair even to say. But because it was true about him, it's an assumption I've now made about people in my world who then now make me feel unsafe because I've interjected that shame piece into myself that I no longer feel safe because of that. So it's awful how that happens. Maybe for you, you heard it all the time about your cooking. You're not a good cook. You don't cook like his mother. Or maybe you don't clean house like somebody he's known or she's known. Maybe you're not the bread earner she wished for, but it's something this person they spotted your vulnerability. They knew what shook you up and it's unique for each person. By the way, the person he went with after me really was obsessed about her cooking. I couldn't care less. I tried not to cook. So he could say whatever he wanted. Frankly, I wasn't cooking. So he wasn't going to critique me. There was nothing to critique. But I know she went out of her way to make him homemade tortillas. And she'd even send him pictures of the tortillas she was making for him. I bet you he criticized her about her cooking. I bet you I heard it about my weight. By the way, she had the same body type as me. So it wasn't, there was no difference between the two of us. But I bet you she heard a lot about her cooking. So maybe for you, it's housekeeping or how much you're earning or what kind of parent you are that you can never be quite the good enough, whatever it is. And you've interjected that into yourself. And now that person runs that commentary inside of you. That's another really ego identity shattering experience. Then you have learned to fawn and freeze. The chronic threat you've been living in has moved your nervous system into chronic overdrive of survival. And so as a result, you anticipate rejection, criticism, gaslighting, perfectionism, all sorts of stuff, intimidation. And you're either numb or you're people pleasing or you're trying to like self-sacrifice all the time to keep this person happy. And then there's the cognitive dissonance loops that are happening inside of you. And this was happened for me like endlessly. I was in agony over it. Did he love me? Did he not love me? Is he working? Is he not working? Is this relationship salvageable or is it not? And I would literally like run that script over and over and over and over. Every move he made, everything he said, I'd compare. Does that show that he loves me and he's working on us? Or does that show that he's done and he doesn't like me? And I couldn't determine what was true. And so as a result of it, you're chronically trying to figure out the truth. You're chronically trying to minimize the harm and rewrite the narrative in order to somehow make this confusing relationship make sense. And then if you've been in this in any type of length of time, you're dissociating, you're feeling fragmented, your attention is narrowing, your emotions are flat or numb. Maybe you even feel like it's unreal or you're watching yourself outside of the body. Maybe you feel like there's the real self inside that's kept really private. And then there's the public self that you put on when you go out to meet the world. I know I did that a lot. I felt like I was a paper doll. I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and they had these little cutout dolls. And then you could cut out little outfits and then fold them on the doll and like pretend to move them around. I felt like I had become a paper, cardboard, cutout doll, flat, dead. I was dead inside. And then I would dress myself up, go out into the public, act like everything's okay, act like this is a great relationship. But inside, I was dying. And I knew I couldn't tell anyone because they would judge me. They would wanna know why I'm there. They wouldn't understand the cognitive dissonant loop that wouldn't break, that I couldn't figure out the truth about the relationship to know if I should leave. So because I couldn't figure it out if I could leave, and I knew everyone would judge me and think I should leave, I just did stop talking. And then when I did try to talk, I'd hear, "Well, you're really angry," or "You sound pretty bitter," or "I can't believe you're putting up with this. It's so shocking." And then I felt so ashamed for that, I just stopped talking. It was easier to say nothing. So I literally had a split between my public self that you got to see that looked dressed up, decent, normal, and then there was what's happening privately inside. So, how you know that you're experiencing identity shattering, we're going to take a quiz next, is that you start to say, I don't recognize myself anymore. You have a hard time naming feelings. You don't know what your values are anymore. You go hyper vigilant and you can read the room, and when there's a little tension in the room, you get upset and edgy. You want to know what's wrong and how can you fix it because you don't want it getting worse. And you start to lose your voice. You go quiet. You stop piping up and offering suggestions and taking risks. You stop offering opinions. And the things that made you you, the things that were really important to you, you've stopped making them important. I stopped going to church in that relationship. I thought it was a scam. Here I was married to a serial cheater who was actively couldn't stay faithful to me. How do I go to church and sing next to my favorite people? What do I say to them as we try to pretend we're okay? And I know the night before I caught him texting somebody. I just felt like I couldn't do it. And on top of it, I felt like he was living such a scam that I felt like we were liars. I was liars because I was there with him pretending we were okay. And I knew there was nothing okay about what was going on in our life. So maybe you can relate. And if you can relate to any of that, you're likely experiencing identity shattering experience for being in this relationship. So, by the way, I want you to know, please hear me on this. I know with my weak voice for the cold, just because your identity has been shattered, it does not mean that you're weak or broken. It does not mean there is something wrong with you. It's your nervous system that has adapted to a chronically unsafe situation. It is the fact that you are in survival mode. And I want you to hear this clearly, even if you don't stick around for the entire thing. Your identity is rebuildable. You can redefine and rediscover your inner compass. I want you to know that this is not the end of things. I know so many of you write to me every week, and I really try to respond to every single person. If you email me, I will write back. But every person who writes to me tells me, I don't know who I am. I've lost myself. Is it possible to heal? Please hear me. Healing is very, very possible. And next week, I'm so excited to announce to you, I have a practical daily thing that you can add to your life for a little bit of money every month that will really ramp up your healing. So I'm very excited next week. Please come back to here next week as I launch and tell you about an app that's coming online very shortly. It's going to be waitlisted next week, but you can learn all about Reclaim You. It's called Reclaim You. It's going to be available on Apple. So next week, I'll be talking about what is that? What does it look like? How does it make a difference for you? So I'm super excited because you can actually, the website launches next week and you can see what it looks like. I wish I had an ETA. They're adding safety protocols right now. It should be ready next week. It's not. I know that because of the safety protocols. But I'm super excited about the fact that you can actually have in your pocket a coach, like literally a coach for you, specifically for you. It will look different for every person who uses it because it customizes itself for you, exactly for what you need. Okay, so let's do the quiz. Are you experiencing a shattered identity? I want you to answer yes and no. And I want you to count the number of times you say yes. Okay, so count the number of times you say yes on this quiz. Here we go. There's 15 questions. I often think I don't recognize myself anymore. Yes or no? Number two, I second guess my feelings and I look to someone else to tell me what's real. Number three, I default to what do they want before I ask myself, what do I want? I default to what do they want before I ask myself, what do I want? Number four, I feel anxious about sharing opinions because I'm afraid it might start something. Number five, I apologize reflexively even when I didn't do anything wrong. Number six, I feel numb, foggy, or disconnected from my body a lot of the time. Number seven, I walk on eggshells and track another person's mood more than my own. I walk on eggshells and track another person's mood more than my own. Number eight, I've dropped I've dropped hobbies, friendships, or values that used to matter to me. I've dropped hobbies, friendships, or values that used to matter to me. Number nine, I say I'm fine just to say, just to keep the peace. I say I'm fine when I'm not, just to keep the peace. Number 10, I minimize harm. It wasn't that bad, or blame myself for their behavior. I minimize the harm by saying it wasn't that bad, or I blame myself for their behavior. Number 11, I feel guilty or selfish when I set small boundaries. I feel guilty or selfish when I set small boundaries. Number 12, I can't easily answer, what do I feel? What do I need? What do I believe? Number 13, I sometimes feel split. There's a private me and then there's a public me. Number 14, I chase their approval or the good version of them even when I'm hurting. I chase their approval or the good version of them even when I'm hurting. And number 15, my sleep, my jaw, my gut, or my nervous system feels stuck in overdrive or shut down. So, how many times did you say yes to those 15 questions? If you said yes 0 to 3 times, your identity is mostly intact. There's been a little stress somewhere in tear. So, it's a good time for you to reinforce self connection habits. If you've answered 4 to 7 yeses, there's signs of identity erosion. You need some gentle repair, like body first regulation or reality anchoring or micro boundaries. By the way, I often give solutions and practical tools and all sorts of stuff on my email. Goes out twice a week. So if you'd like to know what is a micro boundary, how can I recognize that? Please consider joining my email. Okay, if you answered 8 or more, and I know one of you just said, "Hey, it was 10." That's a strong indication of identity shattering patterns. You need to prioritize your safety, your body regulation, and your voice building steps, ideally with supportive people or with a trauma informed professional. I know for me, I would have said way more than 8. My jaw, I used to walk around and do this all the time because my jaw was so tense. My knees would hurt so bad I could barely stand and sit. In fact, he liked to be chivalrous and get me out of the car, and I couldn't take his hand and let him help me because it hurt too much on my knees. He was destroying my knees. I had to say, "Stop it. You're really hurting me." So here's some things. If you're answering more than yes or more than 8 yeses, I'd like you to do a body first reset, which is to do something like this for 60 to 120 seconds. Exhale slowly. Really focus on exhaling slowly or humming or splashing cold water on your face. That's that's what you're doing is you're sensing yourself or rooting yourself back in your own body again. Here's a reality anchoring thing you can do. Write one sentence that says, "What I felt was," and then you fill in the blank. And that made sense because, and then you fill in the blank again. So here's another, I'm going to say it again. A reality anchoring exercise you can do that really is helpful is what I felt was like what I felt when he tried to buy the dress in the store that didn't fit me was embarrassed. And it made sense that I then kind of went off into a corner and tried to hide because I was feeling so ashamed. See, that's a reality anchoring statement. Here's a voice uh, activity you could do. Say a tiny preference out loud each day. Maybe how you like to take your coffee, or what music you happen to want to listen to on the ride home. Try to say one tiny preference every day out loud. And here's a micro boundary practice. Practice picking one no or a not today. I don't want to do it today that you can practice safely each day. Pick one no or not today preference that you can practice each day. I want you to hear me again. You guys are not broken. You're overloaded. You're in survival mode. Your nervous system is in chronic hyperdrive. And these small, consistent moves can help you bring yourself to get back to yourself. So, how does all of this damage us? Well, overriding reality causes us to have a lot of self doubt. And the intermittent reinforcement, the reward system, makes you an approval addict. And then the coercive control and isolation is shrinking your life. And then the chronic threat that you're living in really shuts your voice down. You don't feel okay to express what you want or need. And then that inner critic, that shame interject, you start to hear that and you start to run on that because it's their voice inside of your head. And then the cognitive dissonance is rewriting your own story about yourself actively. Like, for example, you think, do they love me? But they hurt me. Yeah, they love me, but sometimes they hurt me. See, that makes no sense. That's a narrative that is in conflict with itself. So to reduce the conflict, you then edit the story and say, well, they hurt me because they were tired, or they hurt me because they had a long day at work, or because their boss has been on them. So as a result, you're defending them at your own risk, at the risk of you, at injuring of yourself. And then you've learned that to have a preference, to want something the way that you want it, is going to cause problems and pushback and criticism and threat. So you just move into a helpless mode. You start to be paralyzed and make no decision at all. And all of this adds up into identity shattering experiences because the inputs that you're getting from around you, the abuse tactics, is breaking down your perceptions and your needs. It's retraining your nervous system and your reward system and your belief system until your reference point that once had different values moves from caring from yourself or caring for yourself to looking out for them. So I want you to know that you're doing this for survival. Your identity isn't gone, it's just being overwritten. And it can be rebuilt once you've acquired enough safety and you have more accurate self signals that get to return. So again, think about the little micro repairs that you can start to do right now today. Body first experiences like one of the things that I did a lot when I was in that relationship, and I didn't know it was a body first experience. In fact, he would want to do it with me and I'd push him off. I was like, I don't want to do it with you. We went snorkeling a lot. And that feeling of being in water and feeling like I lost the sense of my skin, I didn't know where the water started and I ended. That sense of like myself expanded and I was in the now and I was snorkeling and looking at this really kind of like otherworldly experience. I really got into myself. That's an example of a body first experience. So think about ways that you can have first experiences. Maybe at night this is one of the ones I love to do. Take a washcloth, heat it up really as hot as you can with the hot water, and then wash your calves with it. It sounds silly, but I'll tell you, it is really relaxing It kind of helps me unwind, and it gets rid of the tension. So figure out these little things that you could do. Maybe it's for you. Oh, thank you so much, Dina. I've watched, by the way, I appreciate your comments in the comment section, Dina. I've seen them and I really appreciate them. Maybe for you, it's enjoying that first cup of coffee in the morning. Like it's like breathing in, really feel, taste the experience of the coffee. Like notice what that is like. Then try to do an anchoring reality thing, which I'm sorry, a reality anchor, which is you really like listen to yourself and then make it make sense. So for what you're doing. Oh, thank you, Dina. I really appreciate that. And then try to start to really actively name your preferences and then show up for yourself to have those practices. What you're doing when you do that is you're retraining your brain, you're retraining the signals so that you're saying to yourself, I matter, I exist, I'm here. Oh, I'm glad you're enjoying it. That's really, really great to hear. So let's talk about two more things before I start taking your questions. I want to talk about why this damages you, why narcissistic abuse is different than other forms of abuse, and why it's so incredibly harmful. And then I also want to talk about do abusers know they're harming your sense of self? Is there a level of intentionality to this damage? So those are the last two areas I'm going to move into before we take your questions. So be thinking about the questions you want to ask me when we turn that over that section. Okay, so why does narcissistic abuse harm us so uniquely, so significantly? Okay, the first one, you guys, I hate to tell you this is really hard. So hang on, I want you to grab yourself because you're not a person. You're not a partner. You're supply. Your supply. So everything about you, your attention, your time, your money, your resources, they're extracting them from you. It's a transactional relationship. And they are using you to regulate their ego. You are their supply. You're not a person. The second one is because you're moving through you're moving through idealization and devaluation cycles over and over and over. We often talk about the big idealization, love bombing, the devaluation, and the discard as one big, huge cycle. There's little mini cycles that's happening inside of that. So they get into a romantic whatever. You're going away for a good weekend. They want it to be special. Maybe they haven't had enough, nookie or something. And they suddenly are idealizing you and making this is going to be a big deal. And then they get there and suddenly it's ordinary. Maybe you don't get the room that you want. Maybe the staff is not quite offering the right things. Maybe the food doesn't meet your expectations. Now they're moving into a devaluation stage. Maybe you didn't laugh long enough at one of their jokes. Something happened, and that idealization crashes into devaluation. And then they check out on you, and psychologically discard you. They stop paying attention. They start watching endless hours of TV, or they go off on their own and do something after they said, oh, let's go take a walk. And the next thing you know, they said, oh, I already took a walk. I don't want to walk with you. I already did it. So you're going through these little mini cycles of idealization, then devaluation and discard over and over and over and over, while the whole relationship is also going through a big scope of this. And as a result of that, you feel whiplash. You keep chasing the good stuff. If you guys read my book, Love You More, some of you have said to me, how in the world did you guys take so many vacations? Why were you constantly going away? What you're seeing was that cycle. Every time I would try to get him away on a weekend, things would get better briefly. And then before they'd crash again, you're literally seeing me chase him, chase the idealization, chase the good version so that I would feel like we're connected briefly. That's another reason why narcissistic abuse is so brutal on your self-perception, your self-identity, your identity. But then the gaslighting is one of the core strategies that they're using on you. It's not an occasional defensiveness. They're systematically destroying your reality. They're rewriting history. They're mocking your feelings. They're telling you're remembering wrong. And that creates an enormous amount of self-distrust. And it makes you start to outsource the truth to them. And so you start to reorganize your identity around their narrative, even when it's not correct, because you're trying to somehow get on their good side because you're chasing that cycle, the idealization, discard, devalue, discard cycle. And then because they have this root cause or root need of being entitled and they're protecting their image, they start to think the rules don't apply to them. So they expect public charm and then privately they're cruel and they're using Darvo on you all the time. And by the way, that smear campaign that really got going when you guys broke up, it was already going then. They're already behind your back had a narrative about, who you were to them. Like, oh, she's really sensitive, or oh, you can't count on him for anything. He's not a really good breadwinner, or whatever it is that is happening. That already started. And so you feel that. You feel like you're always not quite good enough, like not enough for them. Like they're better than you, superior than you, smarter than you. And then there is all this kind of triangulation and manufactured scarcity. They create fans out of everyone. They will create a fan out of your therapist. Have you watched that? I was in couples therapy. By the way, do not do that. That is not recommended. It is actually becoming seen as unethical. Definitely not recommended if you have a partner who's a narcissist. But I didn't know that this is back in 2018. That none of this content was out there like that. And he actually turned a highly trained psychologist into one of his biggest fans. They would actually use our couple therapies time to talk about how he could mentor men that she was seeing in her practice. How did he do that? Here's a man who's not even sober, sexually sober, and she's having him mentor other men and using our couples time to talk about those men. Isn't that fascinating how they manufacture fans? Everybody becomes a fan. And that makes you a prop. You're not a real person. You're a prop. And on top of it, it starts to breed comparison. You start to feel jealous. It makes you silent. I know for me, I felt like, how could I run him down and tell what a crappy guy he's been for the week and the latest crap he's been up to? Because I look just like I'm a nagging wife and I don't want to be that. And then they punish your autonomy. So every time you start to take a step into taking care of yourself, maybe going out and exercising, maybe you're starting to watch what you eat, or you're starting to he said, I never did anything fun. So a musical group that I really enjoyed that I happen to enjoy their songs in Mexico, were coming to Mexico nearby. They're coming to Cancun. And I said, we should go see them. He looked at me straight on and said, no, nope. After he just complained, I'm no fun and I don't go out and I don't do fun things. He then runs my idea down. But of course, if he had a movie preference, no matter what it was, even if ones I don't like, oh, we're going and I better act like the biggest fan about that movie. So they punish your steps towards selfhood. They punish your boundaries. They punish you for having outside friends. And they frame all of that as a betrayal to them. So you learn your self-expression is a threat. And you then, that by the way, that escalates your identity collapse, because you having a self as a threat, your sense of self starts to collapse. And then finally, they use all their shame and flaws and lack of accountability and all the chaos and problems they create. They project that onto you. You're the selfish one. You sabotage that. You're unstable. You don't support them enough. You don't champion them often enough, until you start to believe it yourself. You start to, just to keep the peace, agreeing with them that you have been sabotaging them when they've been sabotaging themselves. So all of this then just really fuels a collapse and shattering of our sense of self. So that's why it's really important that we actually step away from these relationships to really help ourselves regain a sense of self by reality anchors, by stepping out of roles and really just being, learning how to be with yourself, by you expressing small micro boundaries around who you are and what matters to you, and about really not getting into the comparison game, not allowing yourself to get fueled up by the jealousy. So, okay, I'm going to answer this last question and I'm going to take your question. Do they know they're demolishing your sense of self? Do they know that? Well, the answer sometimes, this is the short answer. Sometimes yes, and sometimes no. But here's the thing, whether they know it or not, the impact it's having on you matters more than the intent. So it really kind of doesn't matter if they know or don't know, it's still harming you. So think about that. It really doesn't matter, they're still harming you. But there is 3 levels of awareness. There's a low level of awareness where they self-justify it. And them inside themselves, they'll tell a story like, I'm not abusive. She's just too sensitive. Or I'm not abusive. He's just too stressed out. What's happening is the shame and fragile self esteem is driving denial, minimization, and blame shifting. So even though they know it kind of feels wrong, your pain doesn't really register and they're defending themselves, justifying their behavior. They'll say things like, I'm sorry you feel that way. Or they'll have amnesia as if it didn't happen. You know how that conversation never ended and you bring it up maybe an hour later, like, and you can't, then you hear how you can't let anything go. So what they're doing is they're quickly forgetting things. They're being highly defensive and they make promises, but there's no pattern change. Then the second group has partial awareness. This group kind of knows, they have a little enough empathy to be aware that they're affecting you. They may say to themselves inside, okay, I know I went too far, but you pushed me. So they'll say, yeah, I did too much, but it's your fault. You did it to me. They know some actions harm you, but they'll excuse them. And this way, they kind of preserve their image of control or their image. And they know they can be kind when they cool off, but yet they don't really like to because I'm sorry, they can be kind when it doesn't cost them too much. This is when you get the situational apologies when they get caught and the performative repairs, like how the 2 good weeks before it slips back. There often will be better in public than they are in private. That's somebody who has partial awareness. And then there's people who are highly aware. This is when they're instrumentalizing and being strategic. Their inner story is, I know it hurts, but I get leverage when I do it. And here's an even awfuler one. I know it hurts, and I like that it does. Some of them are like that. My ex was like that. He was sadistic. This is when control is the point or pain is the point, and they're using your vulnerability deliberately to manage for their pleasure or to manage appearances. And this is how you can tell. They're timing the punishment around your autonomy. Their rules only apply to you, not to themselves. They'll charm switch for outsiders. They're using triangulations. They keep receipts on you to weaponize later. That's when you know this is a high awareness and what they're doing is strategic. So what makes the difference between the low people who aren't aware, it's just they're defensive, from the group is highly aware and it's strategic? Well, mentalization, let me say that word, mentalization and empathy. So some people have the ability to imagine your inner world and they'll choose to act harmful even though they know it's harmful. They can get into your head and imagine what life would feel like from your perspective, and they don't care. Other people don't really have this capacity and they just default to defensiveness. So that's one difference. Another difference has to do with values and accountability. Some people will name the behavior unprompted. I know I did something wrong, and they'll make amends and they'll accept limits. But if they're repeatedly doing that, that's not awareness. That's just them stabilizing the relationship. They're actually doing it as a way not to lose you, and they know that's what you want to hear, but they don't actually make the change. They're trying to keep you from changing, but they don't plan to change. Really notice that difference. That's a big difference. Let me say it again. They want you to not change. They don't want you to go away, but they're actually not planning to change. So they promise change in order to keep you from not leaving. So watch out for that. Then it has to do, some of them have poor impulse control and they feel particularly very entitled. So some people want what they want when they want it and they don't think about the consequences. They can't anticipate how it's going to impact them tomorrow. They don't have any kind of long sight from their, like, oh, if I spend this today, I'm not going to get paid till next week and I might not have gas for the weekend. They don't think that stuff through. They say, oh, you know what? I really want to enjoy whatever, and they'll buy it now and they don't end up thinking about later. That's a person who's low aware. Is not, I would say that's really poor emotional intelligence. Other people, though, they have the insight and they just feel entitled. They'll say, I know it's harmful, but I deserve it. Think back to my honeymoon story of him spending $60 to use a taxi and our free day at the resort for our honeymoon to go look for microwave popcorn. That's awfully entitled. He felt awfully special. He thought the rules don't. Now, do you think I could have been that preoccupied with something on the honeymoon and actually disrupted our get together And on top of spent money that we didn't need to spend for microwave popcorn, a microwave cost $1 even at retail prices. He's spending 60 plus dollars trying to find it. And a day at the resort. When you stack it up, it makes no sense. Do you think he would have been okay if I had pulled that? Oh no. I mean, he would have been enraged at me for that. So that shows high awareness. Okay, and then the inner management. I'm sorry, image management. This is when a person who's really aware of public charm and being privately cruel, they can turn it on and off. That's a person who's spending. Oh, I love that. Somebody used a popcorn emoji in the comment. Thank you. That's hilarious. Thank you. That's worth it. So a person who can turn it on and off is highly aware of what they're doing. They're aware that they're affecting you. So then it comes to the question: can they change? Change requires a lot to make it work. Okay. So that's why a lot of us don't change. Even as a psychologist, you would come and pay me and maybe spend years to like try to make a change in your life. And I'll tell you, the changes I saw over the course of the 20 some years that I did therapy were really small. They weren't really big. And even in my own life, it's very hard to make changes. I can even make a commitment to try to drink more water and I'll still struggle with it. And this is why, because it requires you taking ownership for what you did. It requires you to accept the consequences and becoming accountable. It requires you to then practice better behavior. And it requires you to then do this over a consistently long time, even when you don't feel like it. Most of us struggle with that. So imagine somebody who's harming you. They have to name the harm without you prompting them or blame shifting it away. They have to then accept the consequences of the harm that they've done you and become accountable to someone outside of them. They don't like accountability, especially to an external person. Then they have to consistently practice non-harmful behavior while under stress. And they have to respect your no, even when it costs them. And if any of these pieces are missing, then the pattern immediately returns. So the bottom line is this: some abusers absolutely know and use that awareness to keep power over you. Some will defend against the shame and the humiliation, but they don't really know. But either way, your boundaries are still being affected by that person's behavior, regardless of the reasons. All right. Thank you so much for putting up with my very compromised voice today. I really deeply appreciate it. I would love to hear what your questions are today for me. And I right now I'm live streaming across multiple platforms, so I'm watching that right now. Um, so what questions are you hoping that I would answer today? And by the way, for those of you who are new, and I saw several of you following me today, thank you so much for that. I always go live every Tuesday at 4 p.m. Central Standard Time. Next week, I'm going to be talking about covert narcissism. So if you really want to get into the nuts and bolts of what is covert narcissism, and next week podcast is with Eleni Sagredo, who wrote when I can't, oh, it's about nice. Her title is about nice. Um, it's a really good interview. I had her on before, and you guys really liked the interview a lot. So I've had her back to talk more about covert narcissism, and I'm super excited to have her come back to talk to me about it. I'm trying to see if I can pull up her title. And then Thanksgiving week, I'm going to be let's see, what's her title? Oh, but they're so nice. That's the title of Eleni's book. But they're so nice. Um, her handle on TikTok is she's speaking now, or she's now speaking, something like that. She changed it. It used to be something else. But I was so thrilled to have her. She's a DV advocate. And next week, we're getting into why you can't breathe, how niceness hides power and control. So that's what we're going to be talking about. Why you can't breathe, how niceness it hides power and control. And the title of the YouTube, which I haven't posted it yet, the title of the live for next week is When Nice Isn't Safe. We're going to get into why nice isn't safe. Okay. He got mad at me because she helped, and I think he felt shame. They act nice minutes later. Yeah, they can really flip really fast. The mood can shift rapidly between irritable or not irritable. I don't know if you guys, maybe you guys don't know this. So let me tell you, on TikTok, I now have a direct from Dr. Kerry. It's a chat thread you guys can join. I also have it on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook and would like to have hear about latest narcissistic news or an encouragement or like a reflective prompt on Wednesdays, or on Fridays, I take polls. If you'd like to stay up to date, please join one of those chat threads, either on TikTok or Facebook. But this week, there was research that came out noticing that there's a lot of narcissistic rage is common among narcissists, and that it's not one of the DSM-5 TR or TR or whatever it is criterion, and they're pushing to have it added. And some of you asked a really great question. In fact, I think I'm going to add your question as a fan mail segment, which is, how is narcissistic rage different from reactive abuse? Several of you asked me that, either on comments or you just contacted me directly and say, hey, I blow up. Does that mean I'm a narcissist because I have narcissistic? Do I have narcissistic rage? No, I think a lot of you have reactive. You're having a reaction to being provoked and abused. So I'm going to break that down for an upcoming episode for fan mail. But any questions for me? Why do they keep saying sorry and doing the same thing over and over? Yeah, that's a common experience. What they're essentially saying is, don't leave me. I don't plan to change. I want to mollify you so that you stop being mad at me so that you won't threaten to leave me. That's what that is. They're not planning to change. It's just giving you what you want to hear so that you don't go anywhere, because that's really, they're invested in maintaining the relationship. They're not very good at being a real person. They are sick, honestly. Yeah, they are really sick. And the interesting thing about this sickness, though, it's a personality character flaw. It's not actually a condition. They don't feel miserable. They just make you miserable. That's the problem. They don't see themselves as having a problem. You have a problem for having a problem with them. Why did it go easily go without sending our boys for 3 months, and it didn't seem to bother him at all? Well, I kind of mentioned that, Sarah. Maybe you missed this part of the live, is because your kids aren't real people. They're supplies. And he was getting his supply elsewhere for those 3 months. He probably did other things that met his need, and therefore he didn't have a relationship. He sees relationships as transactions, and he just replaced that source of support or source of supply with something else. I know, it's really sad and sick. If a narcissist is it narcissistic for a man to be defensive and attack you when you just want to be friends? I don't know. That's maybe too generalized of a statement. Um, I would say it's definitely emotionally immature. I would say that'd be a more accurate way to describe it. Yeah, you never got apology. That's really painful. Moves the goalposts, never consistent with anything. See, these are the things that when we see this, and I know a lot of us have already gotten in a relationship, but when we see them, we need to say note to self. This is a person I don't want to have in my life. This is not a safe person to me. What I used to do that really is dangerous, I used to say, I can change them. For me, they'll be different. No, they're not. They're not going to change you for you. They're not going to change for me. This is who they are. They're telling you who they are. um, oh, somebody said, you sound better than me. I went from voiceless to postal. Now I'm breathing. Oh, I appreciate that. I'm dealing with a narcissistic ex and co-parenting. It's so challenging. How do I deal with it? Well, realize, scrap along, by the way, it's so wonderful to see you. I really missed you. By realizing there's going to be no cooperation, and don't expect it. Don't expect it. Expect it to be hard. Expect it to be combative. Get support so that you don't feel alone in this. Really, you find people to surround yourself to sound off about it, but really expect this to be combative. Oh, nobody talks about coverts. Well, I'm talking about them next week, so I hope you join me. Oh, somebody said that therapy thing happened to them too. Why do narcissists tell you they love you, but they're always saying such hurtful things to you? It's like they go out of their way to hurt you for no reason. Why do they do that? Because they don't actually love you. They're saying it to woo you to have a relationship with them so they can utilize you, extract resources from you, extract supply from you. But it's actually not a reciprocal, equitable, vulnerable relationship. There's actually not real vulnerability. It's a transactional or competitive relationship. Oh, you're looking forward to hearing about covert narcissists from me. Oh, that's awesome. I'm looking forward to getting into it. It's so draining to have ask a simple question and they go round and around for hours with no answer. Yeah, Here's the thing that we often get wrong. See, one of the things that you're not realizing, and I didn't realize either until just recently, is there isn't the desire for resolution isn't their desire. A person who's going around and around and with never a solution isn't looking for resolution. They're actually looking for conflict. The conflict regulates them. They want you to be upset. They want there to be no answer. They want to distract you. So that's the point. So when you see that, ask yourself, what are they getting from this? Apparently, it's not resolution because we can't get there. It's something else. It's to get, they like getting you upset. That's what we keep attributing. I'm going to wrap it up today with this big observation for all of us. We keep attributing our motives, our good motives to them, and we're missing the fact that their behavior is telling you their motives. If they don't work well with you, if they don't want to work well with you, they don't plan to be collaborative, they want to be argumentative. If they say they love you and then they harm you or do repeatedly hurt you, they don't actually love you. They're just saying that to mollify you so that you don't go anywhere. Watch the pattern, watch the behavior. That tells you the truth. The truth is that, not what they say, not what you would mean, not what it would mean for you, not what you would do. It's what they're doing is the pattern. That's what I missed. A person who is actively cheating on me during our honeymoon, during our engagement. He was seeing 7 different women during our engagement. That is a person who never loved me. That's why even the title, you know why I titled the book Love You More? And this is my story. For if you want to know what happened to me, this is a raw graphic detail of what happened to me. And the 3 years that I knew that guy. The purpose, why we did this is I would say to him, he wouldn't say to me, I love you. He didn't say that to me because he didn't love me. I would say, I love you. And he would say, love you more. He would turn this into a conflict, into a competition. And I would say, no, I love you more. He goes, no, I love you more. And it would become this back and forth thing that there was no winning. So that my original moment of trying to be close and feel something for each other, he would destroy because he didn't love me. He needed to compete with me. He saw me as a source of resource for money because I told you I was a widow who'd come in life insurance. And he also saw me as someone that he needed to compete. He knew I had a PhD. He didn't even go through college. His college degree was basically bought, and he needed to put me under his thumb to let me know that he was better than me. That's what our basis of our marriage was. And because of that, I, being a good person who just had sacrificed so much and had my first spouse die, and I supported him all the way through the cancer, and I was like very giving person, I kept thinking that can't be true. I'm misreading it. No, I wasn't misreading it. This person never loved me. He was using me. I was supply. So the same thing is happening to you. See the pattern. See the pattern. Stop interjecting your goodness into this person. All right. Thank you so much for putting up with my voice today. I'm hopefully will be back and better next week. I'm super excited to talk about covert narcissism next Tuesday at 4 p.m. If you'd like to see Dr. Salerno live and ask him your questions about why narcissists do what they do, please join the club. On TikTok, I don't have it listed anywhere. I'm going to go to my links right now and add it to my links. You can go to link in my profile about 10 minutes from now, and you can get a free month on me at any level. Oh, one last question. Yes, and I'll take your one last question. And next week on podcast, Breaking Free from Narcissistic Abuse will be Eleni Sagrado. This week is Dr. Jalali. Amazing interview about shattering identity, how they shatter your identity. Do others see it? It depends. Some people can see it because they see through people, and other people don't see it because they just see the show that he's putting on or she's putting on. They're very good at image management. So my ex, everybody had met him, really liked him a lot, and I wasn't telling them what was happening behind the closed doors. So yeah, they can often fool people for a very, very long time. So yeah, I hope that helps. Yeah. Do their family and friends know? Most of their friends, unless they're like them, if they have friends that are similar to them, by the way, they usually don't have a lot of relationships. If you really notice, they're very shallow. They're like, hi, goodbye, how are you? Or hey, happy birthday, or happy New Year's, or whatever. It's not really actually a deep relationship. Family may know, but the family also knows which side the bread's buttered on, and that is to keep this person happy. But most of the public won't know. it's really behind closed doors. All right, you guys, you take care. I will see you next week. Thank you so much for this live. This was really amazing. I appreciate it so much.